What is the future of RVing?
Is an electric RV really just a meaningless promise, or is there a chance you'll actually see one in the near future?
Ooh, we actually got to drive a prototype Thor hybrid electric motorhome, and we have a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah. So moving a giant box like a motorhome takes a tremendous amount of energy. The bigger the box and the faster you go, the more energy it takes to move that box and overcome the mass and the wind resistance.
Did you know that the energy stored in a standard 20-pound propane bottle is about the equivalent of 1,000 amp hour lithium RV batteries? That's why the batteries in EVs are so large. It takes a lot of energy to move a vehicle.
By the way, we'd like to thank our friend Mike Sokol for that fact.
That's right.
And you know, companies like Pebble have actually begun producing all-electric travel trailers, and they use electric motors to overcome the losses inherent in towing a trailer. It makes towing a travel trailer with an electric truck more realistic, but these trailers are also expensive, but they can make it so that you get less terrible fuel mileage if you're towing with a internal combustion vehicle.
And if you don't know already, Thor and Winnebago have both been showing off electric-only motorhomes for the past few years, and for the most part, they're just dream vehicles. Being able to store enough energy and batteries to move a big box for a long time is almost unrealistic at the present time. So challenges in the battery-only RV are real.
However, and this is a big but, Thor showed us a prototype and let us actually drive it. And I believe it's a realistic promise that is worth considering. In fact, Thor claims that it will be ready for the RV dealer lot by late 2025, and I don't doubt that.
All right. What Thor has done is to partner with a company called Harbinger, which is already in the business of making electric commercial vehicle chassis for things like delivery vans.
Yeah, you might get one of these Harbinger electric chassis under the van that brings your Amazon order,
packages.
whatever, right? Yeah. So, and if you don't know, the chassis under Class A gasser already, if you're going to go out and buy any Class A gasser, those are actually built by a separate company. They're not built by the motorhome company. And so it's not uncommon that a motorhome company buys this whole chassis from a company. Like Ford is a big one right now for gas. And just like this Harbinger chassis, they are meant for delivery trucks. So a partner between Thor and Harbinger makes sense, but we think Thor's onto something with this idea, and we got to drive it.
So how does this work?
It's interesting. So there's actually two systems on this chassis. A little 4-cylinder gasoline engine and a huge 140 kilowatt hour battery pack.
140 kilowatt hours.
That's bigger even than the one like in the Rivian pickup truck.
Wow.
So the battery pack is tied to an electric motor which produces, get this, 1,140 foot-pounds of torque.
Oh, man.
And 440 horsepower. And yeah, this motorhome had some scoot to it.
Wow.
The whole platform runs on 800 volts, so it can take advantage of those DC fast charging locations. But Thor is also saying you may never, ever, ever visit one of those. And that isn't a stretch.
No, because isn't it true that most RVers travel like less than 100 miles from home and usually stay at full hookup parks?
A lot of them do. And that's actually, KOA did a survey of campers and found that most people don't go more than 100 miles. But even if you do, Thor claims the combined range of the RV on battery power alone, plus that gasoline 4-cylinder engine, which has a 40-gallon fuel tank to draw from, goes about 500 miles in range. And of course, you know, there's a lot of variables, but 500 miles.
That's too far to drive in a day.
That's more than my hind end is willing to drive in a day.
Yeah.
However, let's say you're like, well, I went 500 miles. I still have some get up and go. So I'm going to get up and go. What do? Do you like have to go plug in? Well, you can. Or you just fill the gas tank like you would with any other Class A. So it gives you a lot of choices. So the little gas engine basically acts as a generator to recharge the battery. It's kind of neat because Harbinger says, the chassis manufacturer, that the fuel savings over typical gas RV, and we know we're talking about the Ford chassis with the Godzilla engine in it.
Okay.
They claim it might be as much as a 50% reduction in fuel consumption. So that means 12 to 13 miles per gallon.
Sure.
But yeah, you can charge these at wherever you charge EVs, that kind of thing.
Imagine
So,
like just stopping at a Cracker Barrel that has an EV charging station. You can fill up your RV while you go fill up your tummy and then keep moving.
Absolutely. So basically the motorhome runs, so let's say, here's kind of how Thor pitched this. You're at home, you have this thing plugged in and charged up, so now you're leaving home with a full electrical charge and maybe a full gas tank. And the EV runs, this motorhome runs as an EV. It's an electric vehicle for a period of time until the computer says, oh, we're starting to get low on battery power, and it kicks on that little gasoline engine. And it's only a 67 horsepower engine, really, the way it's tuned. And it runs at 4,500 RPM. So it, unfortunately, we did not get a chance to experience the gas engine running. I'd imagine it's, makes some noise, but if you're in your typical Class A gasser, there's a big giant engine between you and your passenger, which makes a bunch of noise. Thor says that the gas engine can recharge the batteries from about 20% state of charge to 90% in about an hour.
So then if you drive until your gas is almost gone, then your batteries probably charge it up again and you can start all over.
Perhaps. And the good thing is, it's, there's also a lot, and they didn't say how much, but I'm going to guess about 2,000 watts of solar on the roof. So that's helping too.
Sure.
And so let's talk about the roof.
Okay, let's. What do you want to tell me about the roof?
Well, if you look at the top of your RV now, you'll see all kinds of stuff sticking up out of it, right?
Yeah, you've got the fans, and you've got the covers on the fan, and you've got vents for the refrigerator, and you've got that big old air conditioner.
Right.
That's usually the tallest part.
Right. So on this thing, there was none of that up there. The roof was smooth, but then they glued flexible solar panels to it. But it was almost completely covered in flexible solar panels. So something, and as Peggy said, she didn't see the air conditioner up there. Large batteries like the ones in this motorhome actually have heating and cooling technologies built into the whole system to protect the batteries so they don't overheat or freeze, right? That's something in these big batteries. Well, Thor actually used some of this technology to help heat and cool the RV. So that means they could use a smaller and more efficient air conditioner, which they did. And instead of sticking it up on the roof, it was in the body of the RV. Something to say that you saw more of the RV itself, like in the back.
I did. I took a little peek while you were getting into the driver's seat, but it was as a prototype and as a test drive. It didn't look like an RV. So there wasn't, bedding, mattress. There might have been a bed frame, and there was like a kitchen counter, but a lot of stuff wasn't ready to camp.
Right.
So it was kind of a bare bones frame out or whatever to get an idea of the sizes. But I wonder about the weight then. Is it going to change significantly? Is that going to change the experience?
There's a lot that will change because if you look at the video that we have, that I'll just put right here, of the chassis, there's not a lot of room for holding tanks. And so I wonder, these are all issues. This was a early prototype, how they're going to accommodate holding tanks and all that such. But what it looked like to me was a Thor axis. The body looked like a Thor axis, which makes sense, right?
Okay.
That can go on a bread truck platform like they do now, or it could go on this.
No, and a lot
So
of those, then they just kind of hide the. I know, like in our vintage trailers, the water tank was like under a dinette bench or
yeah,
something. So they're all above the chassis, which takes away storage space maybe inside, but you've got to have some kind of a tank.
yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure they'll figure all this out. I
Yeah.
mean, in fact, just as an aside, talking to the people who make decisions at Thor Motor Coach, we got to spend some time, we got to spend a few days with them.
Yeah.
And these people actually go RVing and are enthusiasts. And I was shocked. And there were a lot of decisions I saw in the motorhomes that clearly showed these guys. It was all guys that we met. Not
Right.
these people really knew what they were doing. I was pretty
Sure.
impressed with them. But back to the roof. So the objective is to keep it as free of things sticking out as possible. And that makes the RV more aerodynamic, which is important when, moving this thing. Shoving a big box through the wind
It's
takes
going
a
to be
lot
bad
of energy.
anyway,
Right.
yeah. And if you add all
So-
those extra poking out parts, then
Yeah.
that just adds to the resistance.
So finally.
Right.
So that's what we saw before we got in.
Okay, so you got to strap into the driver's seat, and actually, he said no video, and I was really sad because it would have
Yeah.
been kind of cool to even just to look out the front windshield with the camera. But tell us what you thought.
If you've ever driven an electric car of any sort, you know how different that is from driving a regular internal combustion car, right? Electric cars have all their torque available basically right from a dead stop. It's smooth, linear. You just punch and go, and you get this rush of power.
It doesn't slowly build up to
Right.
going fast. Yeah,
They just go. That was this, and in a motorhome.
that would feel weird. I think.
Well, you were in the back seat,
Well,
right?
I was in the back seat, so I didn't know when you were. I knew when you were pushing the accelerator,
Right.
because I knew we moved.
That ain't a gas pedal anymore.
Right.
The interesting thing that we were told is that all of the controls, the brakes, the steering, the accelerator, are all what they call drive-by-wire. So the steering wheel isn't connected physically to the mechanism that steers the coach. It's all electronic. And the brakes are electronic. And the accelerator is electronic. And when we got in, the first thing the engineer told us was, these brakes are really touchy.
Yeah, that I felt.
And all of that, because it's all electronic, can all be modified with software.
Sure.
And these systems have gotten reliable enough that they're actually in some vehicles now anyway. So it's not like this is some scary new technology.
Right.
It really isn't. Although I respect people who are like, yeah, there's no connection between the steering wheel and the brake, and no.
It feels weird, right?
Right? But it doesn't. It felt responsive like any vehicle, basically.
And that's a good thing, because you went through that. You went around in a circle, but then they also had you do sort of a figure eight, and it was a pretty tight figure eight.
So that was one of the things. So they talk about wheel cut on these big, which is how far the steering wheel wheels steer.
Steering wheel wheels.
The wheels steer, right? And this, I think they said, is like a 55-degree wheel cut. We went around what I would say is a very tight corner, and that thing just, it was, I would think this motorhome had as tight or tighter turning radius than our pickup truck.
It felt like it to me.
Really impressed with that.
Yeah.
As for acceleration, there was a straight line. The guy goes, just stand on it, and we did. And I mean, it's not like a Tesla Model S Plaid.
Yeah, we're not going 200 miles an hour.
It is every bit as fast, I would say, as your normal passenger car. I mean, no problem keeping up with traffic in this thing. It was just extraordinarily nimble, and apparently Harbinger made a bunch of changes to the chassis to both improve the ride quality but also improve this cornering. So going through the figure eight, there was that figure eight that we went through. This motorhome felt really nimble and responsive. It was really surprising.
Now, do I remember something about the braking? Like the braking actually is, oh, I can't think of the term for it, but
Regenerative, yeah.
regenerative. So
Okay.
it helps charge the battery when you brake also?
So that's true of, I think, all electric vehicles. The way,
Not our
because
bikes.
no, I wish our
I
bikes
wish
would
our
do
bikes
that.
did that.
So electric vehicles use the engine, the electric motor, so you can, those wheels are already spinning, right? The ones touching the ground. So if you're going down a hill, it continues to spin the motor, but rather than consuming energy, it produces energy. So going downhill, like let's say you're in Colorado and you're going down a steep mountain grade, the engine, the electric motor, I shouldn't say engine, the electric motor actually helps with braking, and that process generates electricity. So you may end up at the bottom of the hill with
More energy than
more
you
energy
started
than
at the
you
top.
started with.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
There are actually a lot of advantages to this rig.
Okay.
I really like it. You know, there are a lot of these like the so as for we've seen a lot of these electric vans which are great for delivery because you leave wherever you're leaving, you know, your Amazon place or
Yeah.
post office, whatever, and you drive around. You really don't drive a lot of miles,
You
right?
go short stop, short stop.
Yeah,
short
it's
stop.
all, yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense for a pure electric vehicle. In fact, it's better than an internal combustion vehicle because you're not stop, start, stop, start, stop, start.
And that not only is not that good for the engine, but it's not that good for the atmosphere either.
Well, right. I mean, you're creating pollution and all that. This thing with the gasoline engine makes more sense, in my opinion, than a big gas engine in a motorhome because you have all that electrical energy on the chassis. And so you can run your air conditioner, you can run all the appliances, all of that off that. So boondocking, especially with all that solar, is going to probably be pretty great on these things. You have, as Harbinger said, better fuel economy than if this were just a gas engine by itself, and a lot more power, a lot more torque and performance than a gas engine. You can run this on electric only. You can refill the gas tank and the small gas engine and never, ever, ever have to plug in if that's your choice.
Yeah.
You have an onboard generator in the form of a small gasoline engine. There is all that solar, which makes boondocking great. I would not.
I'm sorry. When you said generator, you mean the
Yeah, the little
engine that
four-cylinder
runs
engine.
runs the vehicle down the street also can act as a generator to charge batteries when
Correct.
you're stopped somewhere.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you know, this package really does make sense. Now, here's something you cannot do with any other RV that I'm aware of. Because there's so much battery power on board, let's say you're in a place where there's a natural disaster and the power goes out. This thing has so much battery power, you can run your house off it.
That would be a boon to some of those places that lose power a lot.
Yeah. So you have, you know, if you have been considering an emergency backup generator, forget it.
This is your emergency backup generator.
And it's your RV. And it's
like a transformer.
It really is. And so there's a lot of reasons I really like the direction Thor went on this. So
Okay. Well, how much is this going to cost us?
they don't say. The claim, I know. And we know big batteries the big batteries are big money.
Right.
So they said the closest thing I could get out of anybody is comparable to a gasoline Class A. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to guess it's going to be more money because there's a lot of stuff going on.
But maybe it's kind of an easier build because they're not putting in as many like different electrical systems. It's all one integrated system.
That's true.
So it might be easier to build.
Yeah. And Harbinger, you know, if they get a lot of customers, I don't know how much market penetration they have right now, but if they're building a lot of these electric chassis on delivery, I mean, Amazon made a commitment to Rivian for 100,000 of their electric vans. There are a ton of these vans out there. So if Harbinger is building a lot of these chassis, cost will go down, blah, blah, blah. So who knows? Who knows? And as for when, Thor says late 2025 at dealer showrooms.
That's only a year away.
I don't doubt that. This thing was pretty dialed in.
Yeah.
And the motorhome part is just what they're already building with like the Thor axis anyway.
Sure.
So that's the thing. So
all right. So what do y'all think? Are you going to put your names on the list to get one of the first ones? Like Tony with an Apple product?
yeah,
Are you going to wait and see? Are you like completely disinterested? Where do you stand on that kind of a thing?
I'm curious what your input is. I know there are a lot of people who dislike EVs, but if you're in the market for a Class A, would you wait for this thing? Would this be something you would want to buy? We always want to know.
Yeah.
Know that we have a full written article along with discounts, deals, our weekly RV podcast, and all of that at our home on the web at stresslesscamping.com. And there's a direct link below to the article about this unit. And we can actually update that as we learn more. So keep in touch. And of course, we really appreciate your sharing this with your friends or with people.
Anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody you want to.
So, share and like and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. So, thank you for your time. What do you think?